Hey guys, and welcome to an episode. Well, it's going to be an episode on the podcast, and also hopefully should be a little video shoot that Shem and I have together, which is going to explain the whole backstory of Goldilocks Suit, its expression of interest campaign, which is running now into a live offer through Birchall. You've got Robin Holt here, who's one of your co-hosts, and I'm joined by Shem, who is the founder of Goldilocks Suit. And we're here really to go through the backstory of Goldilocks Suit and how you got here, and also answer some really interesting questions that a lot of potential investors have been asking, which are really intriguing. And I think it's going to be a really interesting session to get to the end of. So without really going into some of those detailed questions, why don't you just kick us off, Shem, with telling us all about Goldilocks Suit and how you got here as a business and why you're raising funds.
No worries, and thanks for having me on. So I guess this story, our story, really started about 3.5 years ago. It's coming up to 4 now. When we first brought our daughter, well, had our first daughter, Marley, and we had her in the hospital, and she's new baby, really cute. Don't actually do an awful lot, just sleep and occasionally
Yeah.
cry. And we were in the hospital and felt really supported because we could just go out into the foyer and speak to, if we had any questions, and speak to the nurses there, or a doctor came around all the time. On any questions we had, we could have them answered. But I guess what happened when we brought the baby home, brought Amali home, was, you walk in the door, all cute, show her your house, and, she starts crying, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, no, what
What do
do
we
I
do?
do now? Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned all this stuff in classes before, and cerebrally, you know all this stuff, but you just forget it under, completely sleep deprived that you are, and, stressed, and
Mm,
completely new environment that you're in, that you've
mm.
never been in before. So, I guess this is probably my engineering and male side coming out. I thought, right, let's come up with a solution to this problem. In hindsight, speaking
Sure.
with my wife, she's like, well, maybe you should have empathized a little bit more. But it's the way I was. So we set about trying to come up with a solution which didn't add anything to the daily routine, didn't add any extra stress about what we had, but just to give parents a real indication about why their baby's crying. You know,
Mm.
are they too hungry? Are they too hot? Are they too cold? Um, how can I tell they're breathing without, waking them up in the middle of the night?
Sure.
Just really simple questions that parents had. So, being a medical device engineer, I speak to doctors all the time about an ICU patient, and obviously the ICU patient can't communicate with the doctor, so we use machines to give us information about how the person's feeling and coping.
Mm.
So coming from that background, I was like, well, surely we can develop something for parents to help them work out why their baby's feeling this way, and acting that way. So we set up, so I developed a prototype of a singlet, and in the singlet is e-textile sensors, so really seamlessly put into the singlet, much like a screen printing,
Mm.
is sensors built into the singlet. And then that all kind of communicates in the hub, like a little
Yeah.
module on the tummy. And then this got via Bluetooth goes to your phone, and the phone in the app answers really simple questions about how your baby's thinking and feeling and coping, and a bit of insights into
Sure.
their temperament at the time. Yeah, so then I'm an engineer. That's my background. Not a lot of business background for me,
Yeah,
so I
sure.
didn't really know what's the business case behind this. How does that work? So, yeah, 2017 we entered something called the E Challenge, which is an Adelaide Uni business case competition where
Mm.
where anyone can submit a business case, and they put you through a fairly rigorous mentoring kind of process and judging process, and we ended up winning that, and we got a free scholarship into.
Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. And we got a free scholarship into their Think Lab, so their kind of incubator space where they do really advanced prototyping, and then surround you with mentors to help you with the business case as well.
Mm.
So then we did that for a year, developed like a version 2 prototype. But the version 2 prototype has, everything a parent doesn't like about technology, wires and batteries and things like that. It just didn't
Yeah,
look
definitely.
good. We knew it worked, but just didn't look good. So we needed money basically to do that, to make it look good. So we went to Artesian, managed to get some money from them. And then they teamed us up with some people called the MedTech Actuator, who are business commercialization people, but specialize in the medtech space and
Yeah,
health
right.
space. And then, so with that money and with that mentoring and expertise behind us, we're kind of where we are, where we are at the moment with a version just about ready to go to market. And so
Awesome.
that's where we are at the moment.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that you came from a background of engineering in kind of looking at products which actually helped people who were in critical conditions because they couldn't communicate to you. And at the end of the day, babies who really, when they first come home, they're not allowed, they're not exactly uttering their first words. So they cannot tell you what's wrong with them. They literally cry, and it could be one of many things that they need at that
Yes.
point in time.
Yeah.
And you could have a very acute sense of smell or not very much of one, and guess what it is. But also it can be a number of different things, and that's where this product, I think, is just so interesting. And I think you've kind of explained that the growth story and the pattern of how you went through that process of the business, and really explain some of the validation behind why you've got the product to this point. And I love it when founders go through the process of saying, this is what I know I do quite well, and then this is where I'm going to need some expertise, this is where I'm going to need some help. Kind of doing it all alone is definitely more of an older approach, and I think that it's great to hear that you've done that. And I'd love to know as well, why is it, obviously there's a lot of people who have kids and have babies, so you're potentially tapping into that market, but was there a unique reason as to why you wanted to go down the route of raising funds through equity crowdfunding, as opposed to going down a traditional route that you've gone down before?
Yeah, so I mean, the crowdfunding, we're using it to really kickstart our seed round,
Yeah,
and we started off. So we still are looking at some sort of traditional round, but we thought we'd kick it off with a kickstarting round, and the reason for that is because in the current environment, like it's much easier to ask a little bit of money from lots of people
sure,
rather than a lot of money from one or two people.
sure.
And so we saw crowdfunding as a really good way of doing that. And also it's a great way of raising money from potentially our market as well. There's lots of mums and dads investors on Virtual, and so it gives a certain amount of validation to our product when you have mums and dads investing in your
Definitely.
company, and they believe in it as well. But I mean, like, Virtual has, when we're speaking to Matt, we're blown away with kind of the success rate that Virtual has, and their record. And it's really easy to use. So for us, it was
Awesome.
kind of a no-brainer to start off like this, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely. And I think, I mean, I can already see the problem that you're looking to solve, which obviously we really love to highlight that in some of these sessions, and go down that route. But really, I guess from that perspective, the problem itself that you're looking to solve is pretty self-explanatory with kind of your
Yeah.
background and how you've got here. So what I'm really interested to know actually is the competitive landscape for products like this. There's so many businesses who kind of go into this space. They try to bring out products that help make it easier for parents to bring up children. There's a lot in the ed tech space as well. But what I'm really keen to hear is the med tech space for, kids, well, infants basically, when they're growing up, what that looks like, and if you really have direct competition in this space.
Yeah, so I guess our value proposition is, we're really looking to. It's actually probably more a focus on the parents and the
Mm,
mother, and we're really looking to make confident and reassured parents. And the reason we're doing that is because research shows when you have confident parents, the babies tend to grow better, and you have stronger families when you have confident
Sure.
parents. So
Sure.
that's really what we're focusing on, is making confidence and reassured parents. So I mean, there is a lot of things in this space, and the most obvious one is your midwife,
Yeah.
and yeah, hospital people that you would have around you. Um, but I guess where we say we're different from them is that we're available 24/7. You don't have to go into the hospital to visit us, and we're there to answer non-clinical problems as well.
Mm.
Often people are hesitant to go to a midwife or someone like that for a non-clinical problem. So that's really what we're looking at. We're also looking at wearables as well, and the other wearables in the space that
Mm.
we're in. And current wearables are really focused on SIDS and sleep. And so we while we do track breathing and sleep, we also track a lot more things, and are looking at the holistic health of the baby. So
Yeah.
there's your temperature, your core temperature, your feeding, to answer the everyday questions rather than is my baby going to die in the next 2 minutes. It's more of the
Mm.
questions, why is my baby
Yeah.
crying? And then there's your like apps as well. I know we started using an app with a Marley, particularly for breastfeeding, with time breastfeeding, and just to keep a log of how well they're feeding
Yeah. Sure.
and that type of thing. But we found with the app that it was okay for the first couple of days, but then after a while you just forget to add data, so then it makes all your records not as good.
Yeah.
And it's that manual process of just trying to remember, okay, start, now stop at 3
Sure.
a.m. in the morning. It doesn't sound like a complex thing, but that's
When you're
it is.
manually adding something, then the data itself is only as good as your input.
Exactly. Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, when you're a busy parent, I'm sure that you're going to forget or not want to, because you just think it's okay. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you're taking care of it.
Yeah, and that information often isn't useful until you really need it. And,
Yeah,
if you
of
haven't
course,
kept
of
that
course.
motivation up, then it's not good. I guess as part of the app that we have has kind of your machine learning behind it to kind of learn the habits of your babies and give actionable insights. And I guess the other baby tech is like your typical baby monitor that will kind of your video camera that you have kind of looking at your baby, and
Yeah.
that's really good for giving you a video of, is your baby asleep, or are they,
Mm.
swinging off the fan, or what are they doing? So Goldilocks does that. It kind of tells you what your baby's posture is. It doesn't so much give a video, but it also gives a lot more information surrounding the sleep and how well they're sleeping, and should
Sure.
they be awake at this time, or should they be asleep at this time?
Mm.
And then all your other well-being things like core temperature, room temperature, have they fed enough, like that type of thing. So it gives a lot more
Mm.
of a holistic health about your baby than you'll get from your baby monitor.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. That's really interesting, and I have no doubt that there's a ton of apps out there which have tried to crack so many of these issues, but a lot of them take care of a very small element of parenting, I'm guessing,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
kind of focus on that, and really it doesn't solve all your problems.
yeah, yeah. Because you're trying to take a very simple way of looking at something at a very complex issue. So
Yeah.
the more information you can get, the more wholesome a solution it is, I guess you
Mm.
would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've covered really well what traction you've gained so far as a business with the development of your product. And I know we're going to go into the IP in a little bit more detail later, because somebody has asked about this, and we leave some of the common questions at the end. But when it does come to the traction of the product itself, do you want to go into a little bit more detail about perhaps the product lifestyle, and perhaps some other major milestones that the business has achieved so far?
Yeah, okay. So, as I said, it was me, a solo engineer,
Yeah.
at the start, who were working part time as well.
Mm.
So since that time, we brought on So I'm full time. The director, Jamin, who I'm sure some of you know by now, he's with a finance background, so he gives that like business case, capital raising, and like entrepreneurship kind of spin to things.
Sure.
And then we brought on, so we've got 3 employees. Another one's Elodie, so she looks after health partnerships and the partnerships that we have with clinicians.
Yeah.
And we're looking at bringing on another employee as well in the near future.
Mm.
We also are really, I guess, blessed to have a really good advisory board as well,
Sure.
which we set up this year as well. So Michelle, a founder, exited several startups before. Brent, who's a PR marketing guru, and
Mm.
Brian, who was, CEO of Port Adelaide Football Club, and most of the departments of some government form in South Australia as well. So a really good advisory board to help us in, navigating the startup world, marketing, PR, and governance, and compliance, and brings a lot of credibility as well.
Yeah. Right.
We've also, this is kind of our 3rd version of prototype. So we've done a lot of testing and validation prior to this. And when I say 3rd version, I mean, there was 2.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
And we've kind of tested in the lab, and then on 20 babies as well, to kind of get their data and feedback from parents. But I guess before all this, we did a stack of market research as well. So we spoke with over 100 parents, to get feedback on what they want to see, what they don't want to see in the product. And then, heaps and heaps of A/B testing on Facebook as well, to get insights into, what pricing, what features, and that type of thing.
For sure. And it's really interesting, obviously, to not only understand a bit more detail about a business itself, but also to understand the people behind it, because it really does take so many people to not only grow a business but really scale it up. Because when you're at this point, it's really important that you do learn very quickly. And if you're going to go down a route and it's not going to work, you need to fail fast so that you learn very quickly and learn to adapt, essentially. So when it does come to the business and the business case for raising funds at the moment, where is this raise going to get you as a business? What does the end site look once you've raised the funds and you go away and then you're no longer raising funds as a business?
Yeah.
Hopefully you've raised a little bit. You've raised a little bit, and then you've raised potentially even more after that. And then what does the next 12 months look like as a business?
Yeah. So I guess the money we raised from Artesian was enough to get the product to market. So all our product development, I guess, is funded now. So the money we're looking to raise now through Birchal and the traditional investors is for a commercial launch of the product. So
right.
That's really, marketing, manufacturing, and building up the team is really where we're spending the vast bulk of our money that we raise through Birchal on.
Yeah, awesome. And other than kind of what the funds and the case for raising funds is for here, one of your potential investors has really asked about the protection of the IP itself, because obviously you're developing a product which no doubt has some very strong IP, and protecting that is absolutely integral to the ongoing success of the business. So I'm really interested to hear the breakdown of how you're protecting the IP.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question, and it is. Every investor wants to see more moats around your business to protect them as well. And so something like, as an engineer, and having spent half my life, working out how to break down patents and that type of thing, I was really keen to get a holistic view of IP. So when we talk about IP, we're not so much talking. We are talking about patents, but there's a lot of other aspects to IP. Things like trade secrets, networks, relationships, data, brand, algorithms, apps, that type of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so at the very start, when we first kind of came up with the idea, we thought, well, there's no point developing this if we can't protect it well. So we went to a company called EverEdge Global, which is an IP strategy firm, and we really spoke about, okay, long-term strategy is one thing. What about short-term go-to-market strategy? And they really recommended to really follow the trade secret, networks and relationships, data, content from clinicians that we create, and algorithms. And they recommended in this aspect, in the first instance, not to patent the technology, not
Sure.
because we couldn't. There was certain aspects in the in our MVP that we can patent. But the reason they said not to worry about it first up was because the narrow field that we could patent, they didn't see a return on investment in it.
Yeah.
So they said patenting definitely is in your future protection space. But currently for your MVP, trying to get to market, trying to raise revenue, we would recommend skipping that phase and bring it into your business later on.
Sure.
And that was the same things for things like regulatory. So we're not going the medical device regulated space because of the consumer. We're going more consumer health. But later on, the regulatory will then become an important part of the business. And then branding, obviously, you don't have much of a brand when you're starting up a company. But they say, yeah, in your future, that is going to be a big part of your IP strategy. So I guess like initially, we're really looking at protecting our product via trade secrets, networks, data, the algorithms, machine learning algorithms that we've developed, the app, the content that we've created with clinicians about coaching with parents. And then in 6 to 12 months after our launch, we're then really strongly looking at patents and regulatory approvals and building up our brand as well and protection in that space.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. And I completely, I think I'm on board, with so many companies, especially startups, when it does come to patents, they're just so out of reach for an early stage startup, which is strapped for capital. And actually, in some cases, there's a better business case for just building the brand, because the protection can sometimes really be in the brand itself, and patenting something is, yes, absolutely going to stop people from creating something which is the same as yours. But ultimately, the brand that the customers want is the one that ends up winning. And ultimately, there's, just such a case for a business going really hard to build its own brand, and not only being first to market, but also being perceived to be first to market.
Yeah.
And that can have a huge implication on the business moving forward. Sorry, carry on, Shem.
Yeah, and like as an engineer, like I said, I spent the first part of my life working out how to how to work around patents, so I know how kind of easy they are and how much protection they offer. So it's a lot of money, really, to put
It is.
up. And then to there's no point having a patent if you're not going to enforce it.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's only worth what you can afford to enforce.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, when it comes to the product itself, I'm sure when when you look at people who are having kids and they're going down the path of safeguarding their home, and everything that comes into that child's life has got to be safe. I know that somebody's asked you how safe the technology is here. I'm sure that maybe there's a few different angles that they're asking around safety here, but do you want to just cover off every aspect of the safety of the product itself, just to perhaps reassure some of the individuals who might be a bit concerned about the safety?
Yeah. How much time do we have? Yeah, so in our market research with parents, we found that around 30% of parents were really worried about things like data breaches, wires, batteries, and
Yeah.
RF around your children. So that was
Mm.
really something that we put into the forefront of our design to try and work out how we're going to get around that. So just taking RF for starters, so radio frequencies, that is something which is, is in the environment anyway.
Mm.
It's not something we can actually get away from. But we decided to go down the route of um, uh, called BLE. So it's Bluetooth Low Energy. So it's lower
Yeah.
than your normal Bluetooth. Like the transmission power is lower than your normal Bluetooth that you have. Just to put it into context, how kind of safe this is. The FCC recently changed the kind of transmission power that's safe from 10 megawatts per centimeter squared to 1 centimeters. Megawatts centimeter squared to 1, based on some research by the EU, which said, any RF, we have concerns about it, type thing.
Sure.
So they changed it from 10 to 1. So your normal phone, if you're wondering about what your phone is like, it's so 1's your safe limit. So 0.12 milliwatts per centimeter squared is the output from your phone. So when we're talking BLE or low energy Bluetooth, it's 0.001 milliwatts per centimeter squared is the maximum one. And when you're talking about, all right, there's RF everywhere, how much RF comes from your body? It's 0.0003 milliwatts per centimeter squared. So when you're talking about BLE, it's 100 times less powerful than your phone, and it's only 3 times more powerful from the RF that you emit from your body. So we're never going to say, that it's completely safe, but it is quite a safe technology, and it's been around. BLE or low energy Bluetooth low energy has been around since 2011. So we have some longitudinal studies to kind of demonstrate its safety as well. So it's relatively old technology as well. The other thing about BLE is you kind of have to be within the vicinity. It's got 100 meters like kind of range, which the BLE 5.0, which is the latest chip, will do a house very well. But much beyond a house, it won't really do. And if you're in open line of sight, it'll do up to 100 meters. So if you're trying to hack a BLE kind of network, you have to be really close all the time to the emitting device.
Right.
So it makes it quite safe from that point of view. But mostly, when you're talking about hacking, they won't hack like your individual devices. They'll go, all right, you store all your data on a database somewhere, so we'll hack the database and get access to all the data.
Right.
So the way to get around that is we basically went to the nth degree and got a HIPAA certified database. So HIPAA is an American standard which all your health data is stored under. So we didn't have to go that way because it's not typical. It's not health data, if you like. It's consumer. Sure. But we decided to go kind of that extra level to give parents confidence that their data is kind of safe and secure with us.
Yeah.
And so, you can present all these facts and data to parents. But, how many of them are gonna change their mind if they're worried about raise and that type of thing?
You're right.
So if we say that whole 30% who said that they had some concerns about it, if we kind of said, okay, we're never going to be able to convince them, most of our kind of revenue forecast is only based on 15% of parents anyway of our target market. Sure. So we haven't tapped into the 70% that are perfectly, the full 70% that are perfectly. So we think that while there will be some concerns about there, we think the facts support that it's a safe product. Yeah. And like the amount of people who think it's safe is considerable. So we're happy with that.
Awesome.
But I guess when you're talking about babies, there's always going to be kind of, some risk when, what happens if something does happen and your, Goldilocks didn't give a warning or something like that. And one thing I will just say about that is that risk is not a regulatory risk, because we're not going a regulated, certified medical device. We're going the consumer.
Yeah.
So the risk is very much more reputation
Mm.
than regulatory. So that's
Yeah.
kind of one thing to clarify about the risk when it comes to that. And that's one of the reasons why we got Brent on our advisory board, is because he is the kind of PR marketing guru.
Mm.
And we're also, partnering with other brands as well, which are like a review-based platform as well, to kind of make sure our PR and review is good, and also to have a plan in place when something does happen.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
I guess the other thing about Goldilocks as well is the risk for something like that to happen is relatively low, because
Mm.
we're not tracking things like heart rate, which you have to be right on the ball to track, and to give an alarm about, because if they don't have a heart rate for just a short amount of time, that can have catastrophic results. So
Mm.
we're more tracking lower risk factors where you've
Yeah,
got a bit
sure.
more time, things like temperature and breathing. So a medical device will give an alert after about 15 seconds of not breathing. We're more
Mm.
at 20 to 30 seconds to give us that buffer and reliability
Got it.
in our product. The other
Got it.
thing as well, which I like about the accuracy of Goldilocks, is that we're not just looking at one factor. So we're not just looking at breathing. So often when there's a problem with your baby, it's symptomatic in lots of different areas rather than just one problem. Um,
Sure.
if they're sick, they'll have a temperature, their breathing will be bad, their activity will be less, their feeding will be less. So it's quite multifaceted. So we'll be able to, because we track so many things and give a good holistic view of the baby, we believe the accuracy is greater because we can get rid of false alarms based on the other data that we have. And if one sensor malfunctions, we have lots of other sensors that work and can give us information as well.
Mm.
And also, we've learnt the habits of your baby if you keep learning it. So we
Yeah.
think that the safety and efficacy from learning and that type of thing is really helpful as well.
Fair enough. That's awesome. Yeah, really, really detailed answer, as you professed,
Yeah.
rather. And I think when it comes to the product itself, somebody else has asked, about the maximum lifetime use of 18 months, and around this, I'm sure you already got a perfect answer for this itself, but I'm guessing it also has the lifetime. That the lifetime use of the product for 18 months is also centered around the use of the product for the time in which that newborn has grown up to an age where perhaps you don't need to be making the same kind of predictions, and it kind of meets its end use of life per se, for that individual.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we got to 18 months was, my second daughter is, she's around 20 months at the moment,
Yeah.
and we know what the screams mean now.
Yep. Yep.
So we wouldn't need we don't need a Goldilocks suit to tell us, that she's hungry. She makes
Yeah.
that loud and clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
To us. So what we're really looking at as well is to try and extend the lifetime use of Goldilocks. So, as an engineer, it gutted me to take all the bells and whistles off off Goldilocks. So we have a lot of
Mm.
other features that we have in the pipeline that are, 6 to 18 months away, which
Awesome.
which we can bring into the product, which will extend the lifetime, tracking development goals, stress, and that type, a lot better than what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Also, one other factor that we have mentioned a fair bit is that we're a consumer health device as well. So for a long-term value and higher value, it is often good to go into a regulatory space or into the medical device space.
Mm.
So future, we're probably looking at a medical device, in developing a medical device, which will increase the lifespan because, say if you're tracking, I don't know, asthma or flu or something like that, with Goldilocks, it increases the lifespan because you have those concerns for a lot longer than 18 months. But also it's a medical device, so you can charge a lot more, and hospitals tend to use it for a lot longer lifespan than a consumer would typically
Yeah,
use.
of course. Of course. No, yeah, I'm not surprised. But I think it's really good to kind of summarize and round up in why now is the right time for a business like Goldilocks. And obviously your case for it, which has no doubt been consistent from the beginning, but I'd love to really just hear why you think the timing is right for a business like Goldilocks. And if there's anything that you think we haven't covered in this session that you would love potential investors to know.
Yeah, so like we were thinking about Goldilocks 3 or 4 years ago,
Yeah.
and came up with the idea. So we think it has value and use in just your normal environment, if you
Yeah.
like. That
Any
was
environment.
3 years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah. But what I find really interesting about our current environment as well is the speaking with midwives and lactation consultants, sleep consultants, is the increased anxiety with parents that we see because of
Mm.
social isolation, because of they're now worried about temperature and things like that, which they were never worried about before.
Yeah.
Um, and I think also parents have become a lot more used to working with things like telehealth and technology to give them a good health indications. So I think the current environment actually makes a really interesting concept for Goldilocks, and I think the appeal for it has grown in the consumer market. But
Sure.
also think from the clinician aspect as well is we speak to doctors about using telehealth, and they love telehealth. That
Yeah.
they can continue seeing patients in the current environment that they'd never
Mm.
been able to do years ago. But what they are finding is that some of that like unbiased data, if you like. So when you bring a baby into a doctor's office and you say, oh, she hasn't slept for the last 3 days, and the doctor looks at the
Yeah.
baby and says, hey, their colour's fine, their temperature's fine,
Mm.
what I don't know what's happening here. Is the data you're telling me accurate, or that type of thing? So that
Yeah.
unbiased kind of data, they're losing a little bit over telehealth because they can't
Mm.
touch and feel the baby, and often the webcams aren't good enough to give a good indication of colour and
Yep.
even expressions at some stage. So they're really interested in using things like wearables and that type of thing to give an insight into what your baby, or in this case, what your baby is feeling from a kind of
Mm.
unbiased point of view. So I think that's what makes Goldilocks really attractive in this current environment.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Fair enough. And look, we're currently in the expression of interest stage, which is closing fairly soon, which will roll into the investment offer. And look, if anybody has any further questions, obviously they can comment on the video below, or if you're listening to the podcast, then you can reach out to us at Birchal or reach out to Shem here at Goldilocks. And I think it's a product which I've never personally worked with before to help raise capital for, but it seems so interesting. And there's so many businesses which are trying to tackle the space, but I think coming from your background, you really seem like one of the best suited people to be approaching this business from a purely technical standpoint to see what's going to work and what's going to work for the long term, because you're not here just building a brand and trying to build a product out of that brand. It's really so centered on the mission of trying to help parents to completely identify what issues their children are uncovering or having at a young age that they can't detect, essentially. So look, I'd love to hand it over to you for just any final comments, but then wrap things up and suggest that everybody heads to the Goldilocks page on Birchal to register their interest if they haven't already. And then just stay tuned for the live offer soon.
Yeah, no, thanks, Robin. I appreciate all your words, and really just to reiterate what you say, that any questions, I'm more than happy to cover. If you have them, by all means, send them through. And what can I say about? I'd love to have you as part of Goldilocks to
Yeah,
make the future of Australia better and to help families cope in the current environment.
absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's been a pleasure, Shem, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks,
Take
mate.
care. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.